You would not hear it if you rushed past. The sound is soft, older than silence, lighter than wind. It is the breath of France's forgotten gods, exhaled beneath cathedral stones and between the cracked teeth of gargoyles. It lives not in the history books, but in the spaces where history was scraped away. France to many is a land of kings and revolutions, but before the flags and fires came, it was a land of whispers. And the stone remembers. There are legends carved into the bones of its countryside, not told in museums, but in the crooked smile of a moss-covered statue, in the empty eyes of a tower window where no one lives. These are the myths we will follow, not to find truth, but to remember something deeper. Wonder. We begin in the south, in the shadows of the Pyrenees, where the hills roll like sleeping giants, and the trees lean in close to hear their dreams. Here stood a village, nameless, now scrubbed from every map. But once its bells rang to mark the hour of prayer, and its people whispered to the stone creatures that watched from the rooftops. They called them les veilleurs, the watchers, gargoyles to us. To them, protectors, listeners, even guides. There's a story passed down in broken Occitan about a girl named Alea. Her mother died in childbirth, and the village midwife, an old woman with no husband and no last name, raised her. People said she talked to the stone creatures on the cathedral. Alea grew and she listened, not to the priest who feared thunder more than sin, not to the men who traded silver and stories in the square. She listened to the walls, to the wind blowing through the mouths of the gargoyles. And the gargoyles spoke. When the village well turned black, Alea told them the watchers had shown her where the underground spring still ran. When a fever took the children, she walked to the altar one night and whispered to the cracked lion perched above. The fever broke. The priest called it blasphemy. But the village, they started to pray less to heaven and more to stone. One winter, soldiers came, not from the king but worse, inquisitors. Men in robes and iron who burned books and people alike. They said the village harbored Cathar heresy. They brought torches, and the gargoyles screamed. Some say it was the wind. Some say it was Alea, standing atop the cathedral, mouth open, eyes white with rage. The roof caught fire, but the stone didn't crack. It moaned. Only once, the village burned, but the well untouched, the relics gone. And Alea, some say she ran into the woods. Others say she became part of the wall, her soul sealed behind the lion's eyes. Every winter solstice, they say you can hear her humming through the fog, if you stand at the edge of the ruins with no light and no faith. We travel now to Montségur, the final stronghold of the Cathars. It still stands, the bones of it clinging to the mountain like a secret not yet let go. They say the Cathars carried a treasure, not gold, something more dangerous, knowledge, and they hid it beneath stone. Beneath symbols, the church would not see serpents, queens, the mother beneath the father. In a carved chamber below Montségur's keep, there are marks on the wall, worn but still there. Circles within spirals. The image of a woman with serpent hair. Not Medusa. Older, gentler, but no less feared. This, they say, is La Reine Serpent, the Serpent Queen. The one who taught healing and silence. The one who walked barefoot through the gardens of the old gods, when men still named rivers instead of ruling them. To the Cathars, she was not evil. She was memory. Some believe her face appears in dreams to those who descend into the caves beneath the Pyrenees. Others say her breath turns springs, sweet, or poisons them if approached with greed. Her voice is wind. Her tongue is silver. Her crown is made of bones left behind by kings. And though the church buried her name beneath layers of Latin, she returns in every story told softly in the dark. And so do her guardians, the gargoyles, the well spirits, the ruins that never fully collapse. They are not dead things, they are patient things, waiting. So we begin our journey here, where France still listens. Where the old myths lean just behind the veil, daring us to ask questions we once forgot how to speak aloud. Not every horror hides in the shadows. Some perch in sunlight, watching, smiling, waiting for us to remember. Which legend calls to you most, the Stone Watchers or the serpent beneath the mountain? Let us know in the comments below. Names carry weight. Not the names were given, but the names the world forgets, names that were whispered before parchment, etched in stone before scripture. There is a legend passed among old stonecutters in Normandy. They say the first gargoyles were not sculpted, but revealed. That when the masons cut deep enough into cathedral walls, they found faces already there, twisted, howling, laughing, waiting. They gave them names, not in Latin, not in French, in something older, a language that gnawed at the tongue and echoed like water in a sealed tomb. These names were never spoken aloud, only carved with shaking hands into the base of the figures. Names that changed slightly, depending on the moon. Names that tasted like copper when whispered in dark corners. And these gargoyles, they watched. You've seen them, haven't you? Sitting on cathedral ledges, mouths open in silent screams or wicked grins. Their eyes do not follow, but their memory does. There's a tale from Amiens of a boy named Jules, orphaned by plague, raised by silence. He found warmth not in hearth or prayer, but sitting beside the gargoyles on the roof of the cathedral. They did not speak, but they did not leave. He would bring them bread crusts, chalk drawings. One day, he cut his thumb on a sliver of glass and smeared the blood across one gargoyle's broken nose. The next morning, the gargoyle was warm, and there was a mark beside it, a line of letters that no one remembered carving. Jules began to dream. In his sleep, he walked along endless rooftops among countless stone faces. They nodded at him. Some wept. Some opened their mouths not to scream, but to whisper names. Vorlin, Tessor, Grandou. He wrote them down. Years later, when storms battered the town and lightning scorched the bell tower, it was Jules, now grown, now quiet, who climbed to the top and placed stones in strange patterns. The tower held. The lightning veered. No one knew why, but Jules did. He had learned the names. Not names for summoning, but for remembering. These were guardians, not gods. Sentinels carved from the fears and hopes of forgotten people. And their names kept them awake. Elsewhere in the forgotten Cathedral of St. Croix, an archivist once catalogued a strange manuscript unearthed in the sealed alcove of a bell tower. On its pages, drawings of gargoyles paired with notes. Not art, but observation. When the storm passed, Elgreth turned his gaze. Torre no longer grins after the blood moon. Mordre cracked today. I fear he's listening to someone else. The archivist went mad. Not violently, just slower. She stopped responding to greetings. She sat for hours in the chapel, staring at the same gargoyle, one with no face at all. Just a wide yawning mouth and hollows where the eyes should have been. She was found one morning beneath it, eyes open, smiling faintly, and carved into her hand in shallow script, Tessor. The church called it hysteria, the townsfolk called it warning, but the masons, they called it proof. Every old cathedral in France bears gargoyles, but only a few carry names, and fewer still remember what those names are for. Some say they are vessels for memory, that each name holds a dream someone once dared not speak aloud, that to know a gargoyle's true name is to give it permission to stand watch, to protect, to remember. Others whisper darker things, that certain names awaken. In the town of Brienne, a storm flooded the graveyard, washing away earth and exposing bones beneath the chapel. A boy found a skull among the stones, and beside it, a chunk of broken gargoyle with a carved word, Vorlin. The boy kept it, placed it on his windowsill. That night he dreamed of falling from a great height, wings of stone clinging to his back, a name burning in his mouth like fire. He woke screaming, his window shattered inward. The gargoyle piece was gone. His family moved away. The chapel was sealed, but the town still speaks the name Vorlin in hushed tones. And when storms come, the tower bells ring a moment before the wind rises. Even though no one pulls the ropes. So what are the names? Secrets, spells, memories, perhaps all of them. We do not remember our ancestors by their faces. We remember them by the names etched into stone, whispered through prayer, or shouted across storm-swept rooftops. Perhaps the gargoyles remember us the same way, not by what we build, but by what we fear, and by what we dare to name. Stone has no voice, but it listens, and sometimes it remembers what we forget. It began with a map that refused to be remembered. They called it La Carte de l'Oubli, the map of forgetting. A strange name until you tried to hold it in your mind. For each time someone looked away, they recalled it differently. Paths shifted, symbols warped. The shape of mountains turned inward, like folding paper. The map was said to be Cathar created not to reveal treasure, but to hide it. We imagined maps as lines and borders, but this one whispered. It sang in ink, drawn not just with pigment, but with the powdered bones of a Cathar bishop mixed with ash and blood, then sealed beneath wax in silence. According to one tale, the map was entrusted to a young initiate during the siege of Montségur in 1244. As the fortress crumbled and the flames rose, 4 Cathars slipped away under moonlight, carrying not gold, but knowledge. One carried the scroll. He was told only this: lose it from sight and you lose the path. He did not survive, but the scroll did. Centuries later, during the height of Napoleon's campaigns, a soldier unearthed a strange scroll, buried beneath loose stones, in a ruined chapel near Béziers. It was wrapped in serpent skin, the ink shimmering faintly. He presented it to an officer who stared at it for hours before claiming it was worthless. By morning, he had burned his tent to the ground and wandered into the hills alone, never to return. The scroll passed hands. Historians tried to replicate it. Cartographers attempted to trace its patterns. But every copy faded, not just on the page, but in memory. Like a dream, misremembered the lines would blur the symbols reverse. Some even began to hallucinate, their hands trembling, hearing the map whisper in a language they did not know, but somehow understood. The last known sighting was in 1904, when a Jesuit archivist named Émile Laroche attempted to translate its inscriptions. He wrote in his journal, "The map speaks of a passage not of land but of time. The treasure is not gold but remembrance. A serpent coils across the lines, marking not places, but wounds." Émile vanished 2 days later, but before he did, he left behind a sketch. Crude, smudged, but one symbol stood out: a spiral sun above a crescent mountain, beneath it a single word: melancholy. Melancholy. Not a location, a feeling. This led many to believe the map was more than metaphor, that the Cathars encoded their path, not in geography, but in emotion. A soul's journey, mapped onto the world hidden in grief, memory, and silence. In the caves of Ussat along the river Ariège, seekers have claimed to feel their way along this path. They describe sensations more than sights: warmth from cold stone wind in windless places, sudden tears without memory, and always the serpent returns, coiled in murals, etched into walls, whispered in breathless moments, as though waiting for someone to speak its name again. But here's the strangest thing. There is no original map left. No photograph. No physical copy. Only fragmented descriptions across centuries, and yet every seeker sees the same spiral. Every dreamer walks the same mountain path, as though the map once seen lives on in those who glimpse it. As though the Cathars did not hide their treasure from the world, but in it. You may be asking, what was the treasure? Some say it was the Gospel of the Serpent Queen, a sacred text said to reveal the true origin of light and shadow. Others believe it was a relic, an orb of polished bone that sang when held, beneath moonlight, showing visions of lives not yet lived. But most believe this. The treasure was memory, a story too dangerous to be held in books, too holy to be left to priests. A tale of love and loss, of gods who wept for humankind and of women who bled into the earth to birth stars. The Cathars did not believe in hell, but they believed in forgetting. And so they mapped a path not to a vault but to remembrance. A map you cannot own, only follow. If you've ever stood in a forest and felt the trees lean closer, if you've wandered old roads and felt déjà vu creep like mist, if a ruined chapel made your hands tremble and your eyes blur, then perhaps you've seen it too. The path marked in sorrow, the trail lit by silence, the map that forgets itself, but not you. They say she once stood in the center of a great cathedral, arms outstretched, stone robes flowing, her face calm but unreadable. They called her La Reine Serpent. She was not a demon nor a goddess. She was something older, something left behind when gods began to wear crowns and carry swords. The cathedral was once known as Saint-Orléans, but no map bears that name now. According to those who still whisper her myth, it stood somewhere between the forests of Auvergne and the mountains of Limousin, too grand for a village, too wild for a kingdom. And her likeness was everywhere. In the stained glass, her eyes were serpents. In the columns, scales coiled upward into the ribs of the vaulted roof. Beneath the floor, a serpentine labyrinth wove beneath the congregation's feet. They say her symbol, the Ouroboros, the serpent swallowing its own tail, was carved into every corner of the stone. But the church does not remember her. They say the cathedral never existed, that the Serpent Queen is a pagan dream, a heresy of the mountain folk. But the earth disagrees. In 1986, a farmer clearing rubble in a forest near Puy-en-Velay unearthed a piece of stained glass wrapped in cloth. It showed a crowned woman, kneeling, her hair coiled into snakes, her hands held over a burning seed. Behind her, a serpent with wings. Experts claimed it was a misinterpreted depiction of Eve, but the style did not match, and the glass was older than the church itself. The cathedral, some say, was built by stonecutters who carried the Cathar bloodline. Not knights or bishops, but builders who passed down secret symbols, hidden measures, songs, sung only in echoing halls where the walls could remember. One story tells of a woman named Aliane. She was born blind but could trace her fingers across the stone of Saint-Orléans and describe images no one else saw. She spoke of a queen who wept at the end of the world, who did not fight the coming fire but opened her mouth and swallowed it whole, turning flame into light. The people called this madness, but her voice, soft melodic, changed the way the cathedral echoed. It sang, and on nights when the moon rose full, the light through the stained glass cast a pattern on the floor, serpents forming the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. One winter, the church sent a bishop to investigate. He declared the place cursed. He ordered the statues torn down, the windows shattered. But the stone resisted. Workers claimed their tools dulled against the queen's face, that her image reappeared each night no matter how many hammers struck. One man went mad after striking her chest with a chisel. He claimed her eyes opened just before he fell from the scaffolding. When they tried to burn the cathedral, the flames would not catch, until they lit the surrounding forest. By dawn, the trees were ash, but the cathedral remained. Scorched but standing, they sealed it, buried it beneath warnings and maps that led to empty fields. Roads were rerouted, stories were rewritten, but they did not erase her. Even now, those who walk the woods of central France speak of a soft hum beneath their feet, of dreams filled with serpents winding through stone halls, of women crowned with silence, holding out their hands, not to command but to invite. It is said that those who are lost, truly lost, not to the world but to themselves, can find their way to Saint-Orléans. But the queen does not offer answers. She offers remembrance. In one tale, a girl named Camille wandered away from home during a storm. She was found 3 days later barefoot, her clothes torn but clean. When asked where she had been, she said, "A lady made of stone sang to me. She gave me back my name." She refused to speak again, but at night she drew pictures, spirals, stars, serpents coiling around a woman's heart. A researcher once proposed that the Serpent Queen was a forgotten mother goddess, a symbol of rebirth older than Christianity, that the Ouroboros was not a symbol of selfish eternity, but of balanced creation, through destruction, death followed by light. But the church dismissed it as neo-paganism, and yet the queen remains. Beneath the moss, beneath the cracked tiles and the dreams of those who have lost something they cannot name. She is not vengeful, she does not judge. She remembers. And perhaps if you find yourself walking a path you do not recall choosing, and you hear stones sigh behind you, you are not alone. You are being remembered. In the quiet spaces between prayers and dreams she waits, not to be worshipped, to be heard. There are wells in France that never go dry. Even in drought, even in famine, even when rivers turn to dust, these wells hold water. Cold, dark, and deep, far deeper than their stones suggest. And they whisper. The old stories say these are not just wells. They are mouths, openings in the earth where memory rises and sinks, where the forgotten gather to speak once more. They are called Les Puits de Murmure, the Whispering Wells. No one knows how many there are. They do not appear on maps. They do not sit in neat rows of countryside villages. They appear where they are needed and vanish where they are feared. But those who find them never forget. There is a tale from the village of Miraval. A boy named Henri wandered into the woods after a fight with his father. The night fell fast and the fog was thick. He stumbled upon an old well, its stones soft with moss, the bucket rope long rotted away. He leaned over and shouted his name. The well did not echo. Instead, it whispered back. A voice, familiar but wrong. It said, "I remember you even when they did not." Henri ran. He did not speak for days, but he returned every night. Not to call, but to listen. By the third visit, the whispers began to tell him things. Memories he'd forgotten, dreams he thought were lost. The face of his mother, who died when he was 3. The taste of blackberry jam in a winter long gone. The well remembered what he had not. It gave him back his childhood piece by piece. Then one night it said, "Your father remembers too. He just doesn't know how to say it." The next day, Henri apologized, and so did his father. They never spoke of the well again. In another tale, a woman named Solène was exiled from her village for witchcraft. Her crime, she knew too much. She could name the stars in their old tongues. She knew when animals would die. She sang songs that made candles flicker. She found a well in the forest, half buried under brambles. She whispered into it not words, but grief. She wept until her tears mixed with the water, and the well wept back. From then on, she spoke only to the well. She drank from it. She bathed in its cold glow. Travelers claimed to hear voices near it, 2 women sometimes laughing, sometimes singing in a language no one knew. After her death, the well dried, but the ground still trembled when the wind blew across it, and flowers grew in serpent shapes around its edge. Some say the wells are tied to the Serpent Queen, that they are her eyes, her ears, her voice left behind in stone and shadow. That when the church erased her cathedral, she scattered herself across the land not in vengeance, but in memory. Others claim the Cathars made the wells. That each one marks a site where secrets were buried not in earth, but in thought. Ideas too dangerous to be spoken aloud turned into whispers that echo forever. But perhaps the strangest account comes from a recent source. In 2007, a tourist hiking near Carcassonne reported finding a strange well hidden behind a crumbling stone wall. No trail led to it. It was not marked on any guide. She leaned over, expecting nothing. But as she looked into the water, she saw not her face, but a moment. A memory. Her grandmother's hands tying a red ribbon. A song hummed low. A smell of rosemary and bread. The moment faded, but it had never been caught on camera, never written down. It should have been lost. She wept. When she returned with others, the well was gone. In its place, a patch of soft earth and a ring of stones, each carved with a single word. None of them made sense, but one was unmistakable. The souviens. Remember. So what are these wells? Wounds, mouths, echo chambers. Maybe all of them. They do not demand worship. They do not require sacrifice. They ask only to be listened to. And in return, they remember for us. In a world where memory slips like sand through tired fingers, perhaps this is magic enough. To be heard, to be held, to be known. If you find one, do not call loudly. Whisper. And if the well whispers back, do not be afraid. It remembers you, even when no one else does. There are bells in France that have never rung. Not once. Not in joy nor in sorrow. Not for war nor peace. They were cast in silence, hung in shadow, and forgotten not by accident, but by design. They are called les cloches muettes, the mute bells. Their legends are scattered. A line here in a rural hymn, a whisper in a village prayer, an old woman's lullaby where no child sleeps. But in each, the same warning hums beneath the melody. Do not ring what was meant to listen. The story begins perhaps in the village of Cazenac, a small place hemmed by forest and fog. Long ago, its people built a chapel atop a hill, and in that chapel, they hung a bell unlike any other. It was forged not from copper or bronze, but from the shattered swords of fallen knights melted with serpent blood inked into their hilts. The mold was carved in the likeness of an open mouth, not of man, but of something older. They named the bell Espérance, Hope. It never rang. They said it didn't need to, for the villagers claimed that when danger neared, the bell hummed. Not loudly, but like a breath caught in the throat of the earth. Mothers would still their children, birds would vanish, and those with sin heavy in their hearts would feel the ringing inside their bones. But one spring, after a poor harvest and a harsh winter, the villagers grew restless. They feared plague, they feared hunger, they feared each other, and someone no one knows who rang the bell. They say the sound was not music but memory. The earth remembered every drop of blood spilt on that hill, every scream, every broken promise, every betrayal buried beneath roots. And the bell sang of it. By dawn, the fields were blackened. The trees had shed their leaves, and every mirror in the village cracked. The chapel burned itself from within. The bell, however, remained, cold, silent. Later tales spoke of other mute bells. In the mountains near Foix, there is said to be a bell tower whose door has no keyhole. Inside, 4 bells each, forged with a different name: Souvenir, Silence, Vérité, and Perte. Memory, silence, truth, loss. They were meant to be heard only by the dead. In some Cathar texts, the bells are linked to the Serpent Queen herself. That each mute bell was a vessel for her voice too sacred or too dangerous for mortal ears. Not tools of sound, but anchors of presence. To ring one was not to summon attention, but to awaken memory. There is a drawing in an anonymous 16th century manuscript. It shows a cloister beneath the mountains with a bell that has no clapper. Instead, the text reads, "She does not cry out, she remembers." The mute bells were feared not because of noise, but because of what they revealed. In one story, a monk at a ruined monastery near Albi claimed to hear a bell toll every night at the same hour. He followed the sound into a collapsed tower. There was no bell, only a circle of stones. But each time the wind blew through, he heard names he'd forgotten of family, of lost friends, of a brother who died young. He wrote, "The bell rings through me. It is myself I have not heard." Some scholars speculate these stories represent trauma echoes of things too terrible to speak aloud, given form through these mythical instruments. But others believe they are real. They point to seismic readings, strange pulses in the earth, near old bell towers that no longer stand. They cite testimonies of people who hear bells only when no one else does. Bells that stop clocks, that make windows cry, that peel away lies from the heart like bark from old wood. And then there is the story of the girl who lived in silence. Her name was Elodie, born without speech. But whenever she stood near the chapel ruins of her village, her hands moved not in randomness, but rhythm, as if answering a song only she could hear. One day, she placed her hand on the blackened bell of Cazenac, and for the first time she spoke. It does not want to ring, it wants to be heard. After that, the village never touched the bell again. Instead, they listened. So what are the mute bells? Warnings, witnesses, memories made metal. Perhaps they are not meant for us. Or perhaps they are exactly for us, for the parts of ourselves that forgot how to listen. We live in a world of noise, bells that ring for commerce, for control, for spectacle. But the mute bells remain still. They are not silence. They are remembering. And one day, if you find yourself in an overgrown chapel in a place no map names, and you feel something vibrating in your bones, soft as sorrow and sharp as longing, do not cover your ears. The bell is not ringing. You are. In the heart of southern France, where hills roll gently into forgotten forests and the air smells of rosemary and stone, lies a lake with no name. The locals call it Le Silence, the silence. It is not large, no more than a few hundred meters across. Yet its waters are so still, so dark that birds refuse to fly over it. Trees bend away from its edge. No frogs sing, no fish jump. And beneath its surface, the remains of a forgotten abbey sleep. They say it was once called Abbey Serpentis, the Abbey of the Serpent. No record survives of its construction. No maps show it standing. But the villagers know. On certain nights when the wind is low and the moon is high, they say you can see its spires through the water. Not reflected, not imagined, remembered. There are stories, of course. One tells of an order of monks who worship silence, not absence of sound, but the kind that comes after revelation. They believed the world was once filled with music, that the stars sang, that stones hummed, that serpents whispered the first prayers into the ears of humans. The monks came to the lake because the earth there was still. It listened. They built the abbey without tools, only hands and song, each stone laid in rhythm, each arch shaped to echo a single note. They said when the abbey was finished it sang. But something changed. No one knows what. Some say a monk drowned trying to touch the bottom of the lake. Others claim they found something beneath the earth bones of a creature too large, too old to be from this world. A few whisper that they tried to ring a bell not meant to sound. And the lake took them. The abbey vanished. Not collapsed, not destroyed. Submerged. In a single night. The next morning, the water was calm. No rubble, no sound. Just the faint taste of ash on the breeze. The church called it superstition. They built a small chapel nearby to purify the site. But it fell within a year, its stones sinking into the earth as if the lake had grown teeth. No one builds there now. But people still come. To listen. Divers have tried to explore the lake. Most leave within minutes. They say the pressure is too great, that they hear things, bells, songs, names they don't know but feel they've forgotten. One diver, a woman named Corinne, brought back a single artifact, a silver medallion shaped like an eye within a serpent's mouth. She claimed to see the abbey, described it in detail, stained glass beneath algae spiral staircases, leading deeper than the lake should allow a bell tower, with no bell but a shadow where one should be. She never dove again. A year later, she disappeared. In the margins of her journal, investigators found a single sentence, repeated over and over. "It remembers me. It remembers me. It remembers me." An old man named Jean-Claude once said he saw monks walking across the lake at dawn. Not above it, not on water, but beneath, as if the lake was glass. Their eyes were closed. Their mouths moved silently. He said they were praying, or maybe listening. The stories continue. Children lost in the woods, found asleep on the lake's edge. Their clothes soaked their pockets, full of black stones, shaped like tongues. Songs heard in dreams, melodies no one can write, but everyone feels they've known. The Serpent Queen again appears in whispers. Some say the abbey was hers, that it was not swallowed by the lake, but became the lake. That she dissolved her body into the water, so her voice could carry wherever it was needed. Not to rule, to remember. One tale rarely told speaks of a door beneath the lake, that if you find the right hour and say the right word, the water will part. The abbey will rise not in violence, but invitation, and inside not gold, not relics. Memory, everything we've lost, everyone, but no one knows the word. Or perhaps we are not yet ready to hear it. The lake remains, still, patient. It does not beg to be seen. It does not roar or cry. It reflects, and if you stare too long into its waters, you may see your own eyes looking back from a face you don't recognize, but somehow trust. That is how it begins. The remembering. The abbey does not call. It waits. There are places in France where stone remembers. Not just form arches, towers, crypts, but words, names. Some carved with love, others with sorrow. Many carved out of fear. They say if you stand still in these places, old abbeys, forest shrines, crumbling cloisters, you can hear them. Not spoken, not sung, but breathed. Echoes, names that do not die. The Cathars believed in the immortality of the soul, but not through resurrection nor paradise. They believed in memory, that as long as a name was spoken, a person lived. Not in body, in meaning. In the Pyrenean village of Ausson, there lies a path known as Le Sentier des Noms, the path of names. To walk it is to follow memory. Along its edge stones, not gravestones, not monuments, just stones each etched with a name. No dates, no epitaphs, just names. Some modern. Others so old they are barely legible, their letters worn thin as whispers. Locals say the stones move, not far, not quickly, but shift ever so slightly toward those who walk the path. And sometimes, a stone will bear a name not yet spoken. One tale tells of a man named Luke, a historian, who visited Usson in search of Cathar ruins. He walked the path. He saw his name, carved in perfect form. He had never been there before. He had told no one of his visit. Yet the stone was warm, as if newly carved. That night he dreamed of a voice calling him through shadow. A woman's voice, gentle, ageless. When he awoke, he remembered nothing, but the name still rang in his bones. There are similar places. In a cave near Montségur, reachable only by climbing a narrow gorge, lies what locals call La Grotte des Echoes, the Cave of Echoes. Its walls shimmer with moisture, and inscriptions glisten like silver veins. The names are countless. Some are legible. Others seem to form only when light hits at certain angles, disappearing like breath on glass. Pilgrims come not to see but to speak. They whisper names into the air, hoping to hear them returned. Sometimes they do. Sometimes the echo does not mirror their voice, but that of the person named. A woman once said her daughter lost in childbirth answered her from the stone. A monk claimed to hear the voice of a Cathar martyr reciting the Book of Love in Occitan. A child once ran from the cave screaming, "The wall knows me." These places do not simply remember, they become memory. The church called such practices heretical, inscribing names into stone as a means of resurrection blasphemy. They ordered many of the sites destroyed, but the stones resisted. Tools dulled, fires failed. In one story, a bishop tried to erase a wall of names in a remote chapel. The next morning, his own name had appeared twice the size of any other. He left France within a week. In Cathar texts, there is reference to la parole gravée, the engraved word, a concept beyond writing, a belief that when a name is carved with intent love, fear loss, it gains weight, soul, and that name will echo forever. One passage reads, "She who carves a name into stone gives it not to the earth, but to time, and time will not forget." Some believe the Serpent Queen knew this, that before her fall, she carved her name in hidden places, deep in caves beneath abbeys, on the underside of bells, along the bones of serpents. Her name, they say, cannot be pronounced, only remembered. And if you find it, if you trace your fingers along its shape, the stone will whisper back, not in words, but knowing. You will feel her eyes, you will feel her sorrow, and you will never forget again. There is one more story. A traveler from Lyon once came upon a ruined chapel in the Cévennes. Inside, the floor was broken. Beneath, a spiral staircase led into darkness. At the bottom, a chamber, stone walls unadorned except one. A single name, his own, not carved, not painted, burned, as if fire itself had remembered him. He did not scream, he did not flee. He sat and wept. So what are these names? Marks of memory, keys wounds. Perhaps names are the oldest form of magic. The one thing we give that outlives us. The one thing that binds us to story, to place, to one another. And perhaps the stones are not just remembering. Perhaps they are waiting for your name. And when you give it truly, give it not in vanity but in surrender, you will become more than flesh. You will become echo, and the stone will answer. You are known. There are maps that fold, maps that burn, maps forgotten. And then there are maps that bleed. The Cathars believed the body was not merely a vessel, but a geography. That beneath skin and bone ran not just blood, but memory. And if you knew how to read it, the truth of the world was etched beneath your very flesh. They called it La Carte Silencieuse, the silent map. Not drawn on parchment, not chiseled in stone, carried in veins. This belief, once dismissed as mysticism, gained new whispers in the 18th century, when a physician named Béraud, working in the shadows of Montségur, documented a patient whose vein patterns matched exactly a Cathar pilgrimage route, twisting through valleys, mountains, caves. The pattern was too perfect, too intentional. He cut further. What he found beneath the skin was not blood alone, but symbols, hidden, woven between vessels, words that did not bleed. He was found dead a week later. His skin had been flayed, but not violently, carefully, intentionally, and no one found the remains of the map. Later, in the hidden chamber beneath an abbey in Languedoc, a manuscript was discovered, bound in serpent leather, written in iron ink. Its pages described a network of living trails, veinal paths, and chosen bodies, said to align with sacred sites, underground rivers, and forgotten relics. It named them Les Porteurs, the carriers, marked not by birth, but by purpose. Some were artists, some were peasants. A few were monks. All shared one trait: the veins of their left hand curved in the exact shape of the Cathar cross. What did they carry? A map, yes, but not to gold, not even to knowledge. To memory, to places, where time folded, where the world whispered back through stones and salt and silence, where the Serpent Queen once walked. In one legend, she gave a part of herself to each of these carriers, not as a curse, but as a key. If enough of them stood together, blood to blood, hand to hand, the map would awaken, and the path home would appear. A traveler named Emile once claimed to find such a carrier, a girl in Marseille no older than 12. Her arms glowed faintly beneath moonlight. Not metaphor light, truly moved beneath her skin. When he traced the veins with ink, they formed the outline of the Corbière Mountains. She never spoke. But when he placed her hand against an old Cathar gate, it opened. No key, no chant. Her body remembered. There are rumors still, of people with lines that burn in sacred places, of doctors who find symbols in capillaries they cannot explain, of dreams where one floats not in water, but in blood and sees cities beneath the surface. One cave in the Tarn holds a single mural, red lines crossing a black wall. When viewed under certain light, they pulse, like breath, like veins. Locals say the wall is alive, that it recognizes certain people, that when it does, it hums, not loudly, but deep. In part 6, we heard of bells that never rang. Here we find skin that never forgot. What does this mean? Were these Cathar beliefs metaphor? Perhaps. But some scholars believe it was more. That in encoding memory into blood, the Cathars found a way to preserve something not even flame could erase. Not truth, not treasure, but presence. They feared erasure, not of knowledge, but of self. So they mapped themselves, into veins, into breath, into story. And those with the gift, they are not gods. They are vessels. To follow the map is not to find power. It is to become passage. There is a final tale. A man named Armand, hiding from inquisitors, found shelter in a ruined abbey. There, he scratched his name into the floor. Then, with a shard of glass, he cut his palm and let blood fall into the letters. The next morning, the floor was gone. Not destroyed, dissolved, and beneath it a staircase leading into earth. What he found has never been recorded. Only that his journal ends with this: "The path is beneath the skin. I walked it. It knew me." And that page was soaked with blood. So what is the hidden map? A myth, a metaphor, or the oldest form of memory, not written, not spoken, carried. And perhaps you carry it too, in your hands, in your silence, waiting for the moment when the world itself opens its palm and asks, "Do you remember?" And your body answers, "I always have." There comes a moment not in every tale, but in the ones that matter, where silence becomes voice, where legend stops whispering and begins to speak. This is that moment. They call her La Reine du Serpent, the Serpent Queen. A figure wrapped in contradiction, worshipped and feared, hidden and yet seen, never spoken of in church records, yet present in the dreams of children across France. Was she real? The answer perhaps is the wrong question, because here in the end, she does not need to be proven. She needs only to be remembered. It is said that before her final disappearance, the Queen left behind one last breath. Not a scream, not a cry for help, but a whisper so soft, so true, it embedded itself into the very stones of France. A final message, one that can only be heard when all else is quiet. When you close your eyes, when the cathedral is empty, the gargoyles asleep, the wind holding its breath. Only then, the whisper does not speak in words. It is not Occitan or Latin or any human tongue. It is understanding. A reminder that she was never only a queen, never only a woman, never only myth. She was the voice of memory, of truth too strange to survive history, of power too feminine, too fluid, too feared to be canonized. They tried to erase her, bury her beneath stone and sermon, twist her into symbols of sin, but she persists. In the serpents carved into forgotten fountains, in the names that echo from caves, in the veins of the living map, in the bells that never rang, she is not gone. She is waiting. In one village in the Cévennes on the 7th night of autumn, women gather at the foot of a ruined tower. They wear veils, they hold no torches, they speak no words, but the mist moves strangely, as if listening. And for a moment the moonlight catches a shape that is not quite there. A crown of snake's eyes, like dusk lips forming a name no one remembers how to pronounce, and yet all feel they know it. There are children who dream of her, not as queen, but as mother, a presence who does not command but watches, ever patient, who hums lullabies no one has sung in centuries. There are men who wander forests and fall to their knees weeping at a beauty they cannot name. There are letters found in ruins unsigned, each ending with the same line, "I remember you." So what was the Serpent Queen? A guardian, a keeper of forbidden faith, a cipher for what the world once was. Or something simpler, a voice. A voice that says, "You are more than history has made you. You are more than what they say. You are still here." Maybe that's why she was feared. Not because she ruled, but because she remembered and reminded others of what they had forgotten. Their power, their softness, their myth. And now perhaps it's your turn. To remember, to walk the path, to hear the names, to touch the stones, to listen for the bells, to trace the map beneath your skin, and to whisper back, not in fear, but in recognition. Because some legends are not meant to be proven. They are meant to be lived. And as long as her story is told, her memory remains. She remains, in silence, in serpent, in story. Before we end, let me ask you something. When you first heard her name, though, you may not have known it. What did you feel? A chill, a familiarity, a longing? Could it be that a part of you already knew her, already remembered? If so, I invite you share that feeling with us in the comments below. What legend do you carry in your bones? What name do you hear in the quiet? And if this journey has stirred something in you, something ancient, curious, or forgotten, consider subscribing to our world. Our stories, where myths are not just told, they are awakened. This is not an ending, just the last whisper. Until you listen again.